Okay, so let's jump into the first tip. And the first tip is camera settings. Now I get this question a lot in the comments and on Instagram and even by email. It's camera settings. What are the best camera settings for street photography? Now, it's a very broad subject. Street photography is a type of photography that I really love. And I think that it doesn't matter what type of photographer you are, whether you're landscape, whether you're architecture, whether you're doing sports, weddings, events, whatever it might be, street photography is a fantastic place to practice. There's so much going on and there's so many different things to take photos of. So if you're into buildings and architect, there are many buildings that you can go and take pictures of and play with the light and the shadow and the clouds and angles and different lenses and so on. If you like cars, for example, there are so many cars out there on the road that you could practice on as well. If you are an event photographer, a wedding photographer, the streets are perfect for you, because at events, at weddings, you don't know what's going to happen. You do not know where that person is going to look, where they're going to move to, who's going to get up from the chair, what's going to happen next. And that's what the streets are chaos. So if you can master and start predicting what's happening on the streets and capturing them with the correct settings so that you're getting sharp images, you'll be set for events and weddings and so on. So street photography is the perfect place to practice. Get out there, grab your camera and start shooting. So now when we talk about settings, camera settings, and when it comes to capturing people on the streets, there's a very broad sort of guideline to capture them in the correct way so that they are nice and sharp when you get your photos back to your laptop, back to your computer, onto your phone, wherever your editing suite might be. They need to be sharp, unless you are playing with sort of ghost-like movement sort of photography. Now we're going to park that to the side, because 9 out of 10 times, 9.78 out of 10 times, we want our photos to be sharp. Now from a focus perspective, you want to use continuous autofocus. That's continuous autofocus. This basically tells the camera to keep tracking the person or object as they walk through the frame. So you might have a person who's walking towards the frame. The camera will automatically pull focus. So right now, my camera is on video mode, but it's the same principle applies. I've set it to continuous autofocus so that if I move my head closer, I'm still in focus. The camera is tracking my movement and automatically adjusting focus for the frame. Now, if I move back, I'm still in focus, right? I haven't gone out of focus. I'm still going to be nice and sharp. So if I was in photo mode and I press the button, the camera is tracking my movement and the photo will be nice and sharp. So autofocus continuous is different to autofocus mode, autofocus single mode. So autofocus single mode, you might use that if you're doing car photography or if you're doing architecture photography and the building's obviously stationary, you're on your tripod, you've got your focus locked in and the subject is not moving. That's when you use single autofocus. The reason why you wouldn't use continuous autofocus in that mode, say a car or a bus or a lorry goes past, the camera might then shift its focus to that object, or a bird flies past the camera might shift its focus to that object. If you know you're taking something stationary, landscape, a church, a tree, and it's not moving, you want it in autofocus single mode and just focus on that object, and then it's just locked for the entirety of your process. And in street photography, people are obviously moving around, things are happening, so you need an autofocus mode, autofocus continuous, to adapt to your environment. Using the correct settings for your environment is really important. All digital cameras these days have these settings. You have to go into your camera and master its menu so that when things do happen, if you're a wedding photographer and you need to switch through your menu, you need to switch something up because your camera is not keeping up with what you're thinking, you need to know where to change that. Do not leave it to the last minute. I've been there, it's not fun. Now let's move on to shutter speed. Shutter speed, you want a shutter speed fast enough to freeze the motion. And I always like to start off on 2/50th of a second. 2/50th of a second freezes most people as they're walking past, but this does depend on how fast you are moving and how fast the person's moving. For example, if somebody is walking past your camera and you're stationary, 2/50th of a second will probably be fast enough to freeze the motion of that person. But if that person is running past, 2/50th of a second might not be fast enough to freeze the motion and make that person pin sharp in your frame. Whenever you take a photo, golden rule, whenever you take a photo, doesn't matter what kind of photography you're doing, do a few test shots in your environment. Look at what you're trying to take a picture of, take a few test shots, zoom into them, and make sure they're nice and sharp. Make sure you get your settings. Once you've got your settings for that environment, for the lighting and the situation that you're in, you can then plug away. You can then hit that shutter button knowing that you've put the homework in, done that little bit of research, and that your photos are going to be sharp. The worst thing is if you do not do this test, you do not make sure that your photos are sharp, you do not make sure that your settings are correct, and then you go home and everything's just slightly off. I've been there, I've done that before, and I'm telling you from experience, just take a few test shots and then look at your photos and make sure they're nice and sharp. It will save you a lot of headache. Now, when it comes to aperture, you want to select an aperture that will look good for your environment and for your frame. For example, in a lot of my photography, I use aperture of around 4 to 6 because I want majority of things sharp in my frame. My photography style is a very minimalist photography style, as you can see on screen here. There's not too many elements in my frame, and each element that I select to be in my frame has a purpose. So I want people to be able to see each element and it interacts with the subject in that frame. Now, just because you've got a fantastic lens and the lens can go down to a 1.2 or a 1.4 or a 1.6 does not mean that you need to shoot at a low aperture. So if we're shooting a car, for example, and you use a super low aperture, the back end of the car might be out of focus. So you need to look at your environment, what you're trying to say, and allow that aperture to speak to your audience. You wouldn't take a photo of a building, for example, if you're an architectural photographer, on an f2. You would use something like an f10, an f16, because you want everything in focus. So have a real think about your environment and what you're trying to say. Get out there and practice. That is the best way that you will learn how to take better photos and become a better photographer. You do not learn at home how to swim. You do not learn at home how to ride a bike. You learn these things by actually going out and applying yourself again and again, time after time, day after day, week after week, year after year. That's when your photography will really, really improve. And obviously the last thing on our exposure triangle is ISO. Now we always want to leave ISO till last. You always want to go shutter speed first, aperture, and then ISO. ISO is there just to bring up brightness in the frame if we need it. I leave my ISO on 100. And then if I'm in an environment where I need to pump it up a little bit to add balance to my frame, balance of light and contrast, then I'll pump it up just a little bit, just enough to capture the data so that when I get back to Lightroom, I can manipulate the photo as much as I like, because I've got all the data I need and Lightroom can see everything that I've captured for that frame. One of my top tips is to use the brightness histogram. The brightness histogram is a very, very underrated tool, and I always use it to make sure that I've captured all the data in my frame. And if you want a full breakdown on how to get sharp images with any camera at all, you can click on this video right here in this corner, and I'll also put a link in the description below. This video will show you exactly how to get sharp images with any camera. So in addition to all these settings that we've gone through your autofocus, we've gone through shutter, we've gone through aperture, and we've gone through ISO. What you should do is really get used to changing these settings really quickly when you're out in your environment. So you'll have a number of dials on your camera depending what camera you use. Canon, Sony, Pentax, Panasonic, whatever, Nikon, whatever it might be. You can go into your menu settings and set your dials to do a specific thing. So on my camera, I've got my front dial that does shutter, my back dial that does aperture, another back dial that does ISO. So I can then change those settings very, very quickly. The last thing, the most annoying thing is when you're out there on the streets or at an event or wherever it might be. This video is about street photography, so let's talk about the streets. Something happens before your eyes. You try to change your settings. You don't really know how to change your settings quick enough, and that moment has gone. That has kept me up at night many a time. So sometimes we need to accept imperfections. We need to accept the mistakes that we make. We might have selected the wrong shutter speed, the wrong aperture, and so on. And sometimes you find an amazing photo. See, when we make mistakes in life, in photography, whatever it might be, that's when we learn the most. Don't be hard on yourself because you missed that opportunity. Learn from it. Every grey cloud has a silver lining. And yeah, I know that's a really cheesy saying, but it is true. The reason why we fall is so that we can learn how to pick ourselves up again. And if we learn how to pick ourselves up again and again and again, falling does not become scary at all. Falling, in fact, becomes beautiful because we get stronger and we learn more. Our knowledge grows. We grow as a person, as a human being. So step outside your comfort zone, make mistakes, play around, and accept the imperfections of life. So the main thing is that your photo, your frame, your creative ability is telling a story. That is the most important thing. The settings are there to capture that moment in the environment that you're in that support the story. But the main thing is the story. Concentrate on the story, let the settings find themselves, and you will be in for a great surprise. The story is always the most important. Think about a movie. Think about your favorite movies. Nowadays, we have movies like Marvel movies, action movies, and it's all about CGI and different tools and AI and so on, where, 20, 30, 40 years ago, it was all about the story. If you ever seen a movie called Casablanca, an absolute gem of a film. Beautifully told, beautifully scripted, amazing actors, no CGI, no fancy stuff, just an amazing story. And it really did touch my heart. If you haven't seen it, then go out there and watch it. But my favorite movies are the ones that have a deep meaning. They stir up emotion. They tell somebody's story or a group of people's story in such a beautiful way that it sticks with you. I'm sure you've all seen movies like that and you all understand what I'm talking about. So don't worry so much about your camera, the lens, the settings, and everything else that comes with that crazy world, all the pressures. The story is always the most important.